It's safe to say that Resident Evil 3 Remake had enormous hype leading up to its release. It was announced just less than a year after the release of Resident Evil 2 Remake, which was universally praised for its faithful level design and modern gameplay. However, Resident Evil 3 Remake failed to live up to the hype and disappointed hardcore fans. It was criticized for its cut content, level design, and length, with it only being 5 hours long. This was a shock to many since the Resident Evil 2 Remake exceeded expectations. Resident Evil 3 Remake has been a divisive game since its release, with many fans criticizing it for being unfaithful, while others say it's still a fun game that can stand on its own. While it has shortcomings, I still think it's an enjoyable experience that borrows concepts from the original while making new ones that work for this modern retelling. Overall, the remake's story is much improved. The side characters get more screen time and have more interesting personalities. The character progression between Jill and Carlos throughout the whole game is definitely the best part of the remake.
I'm not gonna die on you, leave you in a cold, cruel, Carlosless world.
Okay.
The story just flows better here, and Nemesis gets a much better introduction. This portrayal of Jill Valentine is my favorite video game character of all time. Nicole Tompkins did a great job of portraying her. While the game is short, it's never boring. It's paced very well, and in some ways it feels like an extended movie. The hospital is vastly improved from the original. Before, it felt too short and overall just felt out of place, but in the remake it's the scariest part of the game. It has some of the best level design in the game and actually fits into the story this time. While many would disagree, I would argue that the positives outweigh the negatives. While the game is always fun, it's very light on content. The original was huge and had many places to explore. The Uptown, City Park, Dead Factory, and the Clock Tower have all been removed from the remake. I actually don't mind the removal of Uptown or the Factory. The city portions of the game took me about the same time, so I don't think Uptown was needed. And of course, Resident Evil 2 Remake set the precedent of the Nest Lab, so it makes sense for the Factory not to be here. However, it feels like most of the game is missing due to no Clock Tower or Park. In my mind, these were some of the most iconic places in the original, and them not being here in the remake is very disappointing. The remake's RPD section is by far the worst part of the game. This might be controversial, but I don't think it was necessary for the remake. It doesn't fit well into the story, and everyone knows it was only in the original because they needed to reuse content to make the game longer. They could have just used those resources to replace it with the Clock Tower. This remake is good, but it could have been something more. When regarding Nemesis in the remake, a lot of people say he's not properly utilized as he was in the original, but I disagree. In the original, he only stalks you in open-ended gameplay for a few short and easy encounters. He has a lot of downtime and most of his encounters are scripted chase scenes. This is very similar to how he is in the remake. The reason so many people are disappointed with Nemesis is due to what was done with Mr. X in the Resident Evil 2 remake. Mr. X is the best stalker enemy in any Resident Evil game. This title should have been given to Nemesis in his remake, but he is more in line with how he was in the original. While it would have been nice to have a more unscripted Nemesis, it is faithful to the original in this sense. The remake creates new ideas that mostly work for me. And each game has pros and cons, and that's why I love them so much. It's really down to personal preference which game you will enjoy more. I think it's important to compare the reception in the originals versus the remakes. The original and remake counterparts have very similar reception. Resident Evil 2 perfected survival horror, while Resident Evil 3 was shorter and less focused than the one before it. I love Resident Evil 3, the original and the remake. The remake shouldn't be considered a good remake or a faithful one. but it is a good game. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the survival horror.